Welcome to our community. Susie Thomas with you this morning. Happy to welcome back David Held, who is the Executive Director of Stark Tuscarawas Wayne Recycling District. Good morning.
Yes, hello, Susie. Thank you for having me.
Well, David, it's been a little weird time. We've been at home with our garbage and not quite sure what to do with everything. So I understand some people are not obeying the rules. So we wanted to talk with you and make sure that we know what the rules are and that we're doing it right and that we're recycling. So
Yes.
take us through it. First of all, what are we doing wrong these days?
Okay, so we've had a number of things that have changed in the past, I'd say in the past year
Okay.
with recycling. So typically, China has been the largest buyer of recycled materials, not only from the United States, but from around the world. The problem is that they had a very strong appetite for those recyclables, and but at the same time, we were also sending over, along with those recyclables, in the same shipment, there was a lot of contamination or garbage.
Mm.
So then China would sort through the recyclables and then also the garbage, and they got to the point where they said, no more. We can now no longer take contaminated recyclables.
Why was that happening? Why were we not sorting it out over here first?
Well, we did have companies that were sorting the materials, but they weren't sorting them to the extent that it was clean recycling. So, for example, if you look at our recycling drop-offs in the Stark, Tuscarawas, and Wayne County area, we have a bin that is exclusively for cardboard, a bin that's exclusively for paper.
Mm-hmm.
We have a 95% clean rate with cardboard and paper. Then when you look at the commingle, we had that labeled as plastics 1 through 3 and metal, aluminum cans, also glass jars and glass bottles. And oftentimes what we would find is people would put in the plastic bags. They would put in garden hoses. They would put in lawn furniture. They would put in items that were, let's say, a yogurt container or a peanut butter jar that still had peanut butter. So part of it was contamination of the recycled materials, and part of it was also just materials like a rubber hose, for example, or a lawn chair that is just not, even though it might, rubber hose is not acceptable, but a lawn chair might be labeled as a plastic number 2, but it just wouldn't be recycled in the process with the recycling companies that we are taking the material to. So what we had to do is, because China is the biggest buyer, they said we want clean recycling. So we had to make a change. So what we're doing now is that we know that the paper and cardboard is working. So when we ask for cardboard only, we know that 95 to 99% of the time we get good, clean cardboard. Same thing with paper.
Mm-hmm.
With the commingles, we had to change it up. So what we're doing now is we're going back to the way that we used to do it about 15 years ago. And we are asking that people put the plastic bottles and plastic jugs in one container.
Okay.
We're asking that they put metal and aluminum cans in the next container at the same drop-off. And then we have a separate bin for glass bottles and glass jars.
Mm-hmm.
And at the sites where we've made those changes, we've seen the contamination rate go from about 65% to below 25%, which is really where our target's at. We want to be below 25%, and ideally at like a 5% or less contamination rate. So we're changing all of our labels on all of the bins.
Mm-hmm.
We have 71 drop-offs in Stark County, Tuscarawas County, and Wayne County. So all of those public drop-offs, they're going to get new bins that are a gold color, and they're going to be have new labels.
So the main thing we need to do is read.
Yes,
Just
that's
read
right.
And put it in the right one.
But you got to read it, and we're even going to put pictures on there.
Oh.
So because sometimes people,
Thank you.
Like myself, I'll just I'm not always somebody that's necessarily paying attention. I respond better if I see like a picture or a color or something. Everybody's different. Everybody's
Well, we're
eyes
creatures
are
of habit.
Yes.
I'm used to going to that last bin and tossing it all in.
Yes, and really, the people that were recycling, it really wasn't anybody's fault.
Mm-hmm.
Occasionally we would have somebody that would dump illegally, which that is clearly a problem. But I think what we've learned is that when we ask for mixed recycling, what you indeed get is a mixture of
Right.
different items.
Right.
So somebody would take, let's say, a microwave, and they'd say, oh, it has glass in it, it has plastic in it, it has metal in it, and so
Maybe they can
it's
use this.
recyclable. Yes,
Hmm.
yes. So it was with good intentions, but
Sure.
really in the system that we have, we want plastic bottles and plastic jugs only.
Okay.
We're not going to take the plastics 3 through 7. And that's because the companies, for example, like the Kimball Company, the Rumpke Company, Republic, they only want the plastic bottles and jugs. They do not have a market for the plastics 3 through 7, which is like food containers, yogurt containers,
Hmm.
and oftentimes they're contaminated anyway. So what we're doing is we're asking specifically for certain items at the drop-off, because we know that if we don't get the contamination rate down to like a 5%, then that contaminated load just goes into the garbage because we don't have a buyer for it.
Yeah, and you haven't really recycled after all.
Yes, exactly.
Let's
And,
talk
and
about that peanut butter jar. What do you do with it then?
yeah, so the peanut butter jar, what we're asking for now is any of the jars that have a neck and a shoulder on it. So those are the ones that really the recycling companies, that's what they're looking for, which is like a milk jug, a water bottle,
Hmm.
any of the items that like the big plastic jars or those are ones that oftentimes get rejected. But
Okay.
certainly any item that you put in the recycle bin, we do want it cleaned out, because when it's contaminated with food or there's food left over in it, it just it's not an acceptable item.
How clean
So
is clean? I'm going to
yeah, I mean,
compare my husband and me. My husband is your dream recycler. He would put every single jar in the dishwasher first and then take it over to the recycling bin. I will put a drop or two of dishwashing liquid in, a little water, shake it up, pour it out, and then throw it into our recycling thing. It probably still has a little bit of something on the sides, a little
yes.
residue.
Yeah, I mean that's still that's going to be that would still get recycled.
Okay.
Ideally, of course it's nice what your husband's doing.
Yeah,
That's great that he does that.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
it is.
and
But
I had some people say to me, well, geez, now I got to clean the garbage before I recycle it, and really
yeah.
what it comes down to is that we know that recycling, it helps us because we keep material out of the landfills, but it's also what we're doing is we're giving new life to items that normally would just go into the garbage, go into the landfill. So we know that it's a good thing. We're in a down market right now because whenever the price of oil or fuel is down, when the price of oil is down, it can be less expensive for a company to make virgin plastic or to make, because one of the highest volume materials that makes plastic bottles is oil. And so when the price of oil is low, then companies are not as eager to get recycled plastic because it's just in some cases cheaper to make brand new plastic. And so that's where we want to make the recycling commodity as attractive as we can to the companies that buy it.
So for the peanut butter jar, just make sure there's no peanut butter in it.
Yes, just make
Okay.
sure that it's clean. So when we
Okay.
get when you have, let's say, the Kimball Company or Rumpke or Waste Management or Republic, whenever they're collecting recyclables, they'll sort all the plastics out, they'll bale it, and then they'll sell it to a buyer. And the buyer will examine it. They'll say, boy, this company always provides good, clean plastics.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what the companies are striving for, is they're striving to collect and sort good, clean plastics, good, clean metal and aluminum cans. And again, we're doing a great job with the paper. We're doing a great job with the cardboard. The cardboard volume continues to go up.
Good.
You might ask, well, why does the cardboard go up?
Why? I was going to ask that.
Any guess on that? It's a lot of people are buying from Amazon and buying online.
Oh, really?
So, yeah, especially now.
I know.
I mean, it's been out of control as far as the volume of cardboard. So we have our drivers picking up a lot more frequently with the cardboard and the paper. Any guess why the paper is going down?
Where?
A large volume of it was the newspapers. So the newspapers are a lot thinner,
Right.
and oftentimes there's just not as many people that are buying the hard newspaper copy, but they're going online to get the news.
Mm-hmm.
So we're seeing a big change in that. And but for the most part, we knew that the same people that go to the recycling drop-off to drop off paper and cardboard are the same people that are dropping off the mixed commingles, as we call it. And what we've learned is we were just asking for the wrong thing. So now we're asking specifically for bottles, plastic bottles and jugs, metal and aluminum cans, and glass jars and glass bottles. And we've seen that when we change the decals, when we change the labels, change what we're asking for, we have great compliance.
Great.
And so it's really working out well.
What numbers should we watch for on the bottom of our plastics?
Well, see, that's one. It's kind of interesting because really the numbers were put together so that they could identify the melting point of certain plastics. And so oftentimes you might see styrofoam that might have like a number 2 on it, but it's really not an item that the people that buy the plastic from us will take. So what we've learned is that we don't want to go off of the numbers, even though it's industry-wide, we've done it for years. Plastic 1, plastic 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now what we're asking for, and that's why we put the pictures, we want plastic bottles, plastic jugs, like the milk jugs.
Got it.
And the water bottles, pop bottles. And those are the 1 and 2 number.
If it's got a neck and a shoulder, you're going for it.
Yes.
That's what we look for.
That's right, a neck and a shoulder. Then you can put it in there.
What do we do with our plastic bags?
Yeah, the plastic bags, that's a good question. So this is the best example that I can think of as to what plastic bags do to our system. So when they first started with these recycling systems, like, for example, you'll have one of the local companies that buys our recyclables, they put $13 million into a recycling sorting process. And at first they said, hey, bring in the plastic bags and, you can load your recyclables in a plastic bag, and we have a roller with teeth that will shred it up. And then what would happen, the roller would get the plastic and it would get tangled up.
Oh.
And then they'd have to, after breaking up the plastic bags, it's almost like when you're vacuuming at your house, and I have 5 daughters and 2 dogs. And so when we vacuum, it doesn't take long for the hair to get wrapped around. They all have long hair, so the hair gets wrapped around the wheel, and then you got to take the scissors, you got to cut it off, and because the vacuum cleaner just doesn't work. So that similarly is what was happening with the plastic roller in the recycling machine. All the plastic bags would get wrapped around it, and then it became ineffective. They'd have to stop the process for like an hour, cut off the plastic bags. So that's where they're finding that it's just too problematic with the plastic bags, and then they're not able to recycle them anyways because they get torn up, and it messes with the system. So what we're asking now is just you can use your plastic bag, but just empty it in the bin and take the plastic bag home and put it in the trash.
Really? Maybe we could find a crafter that braids little things out of plastic bags. I think I've heard of people who do that, but I just feel so bad throwing those away.
I know, and if you talk to the operators of the landfill, they cannot stand those little bags that we use at grocery stores.
Right.
Because what happens is when they get loose, and you go to any landfill in the United States, and when those little plastic bags that people like to use for their groceries, when they get loose in the garbage, the wind picks them up and just blows them into the trees in the nearby area.
Yes.
So that's why you have some companies that are no longer using, some grocery stores are no longer using the plastic bags, and why you see a movement to rid themselves of the plastic bags.
Well, we were all kind of going towards having nice big canvas bags that we took ourselves and loaded those up, but then this virus hit and you weren't permitted to take your own bags in anymore. So maybe we'll get back to that, but that seemed to be a really great way to solve the problem.
Yes, you're right. You're right. Now, the thing is you could still, you can still ask for paper. So
But it
paper
doesn't
is,
have handles. That's
no, I know,
my gripe.
I know. It's a,
I need a
you know,
handle.
whenever I'm bringing in the groceries, it's amazing how when you have those plastic bags, they
Yeah.
are very effective in carrying in
Yes.
the groceries.
Lots at
And
once.
I see your point. I agree with it. And so what you could do is you could use those and then you store them up, but just don't put them into the recycling bin.
Okay.
Just dump them, and you can still go to, you can take them back to the grocery store or to a lot of the stores like
Yes.
Walmart and a lot of the grocery stores. They will recycle them. They have a spot where you can drop off those plastic bags.
Oh, good to
You can
know.
recycle them. Yeah,
Awesome.
just don't put them in our recycle drop off.
No. Got
It
it.
creates a
Okay.
problem. Yeah.
That clogs up the roller. We don't
Clogs
want.
up the roller, which we don't want.
No. We are speaking with David Held. He's the executive director of Stark Tuscarawas Wayne Recycling District. And we'll be back after these words. You're listening to Our Community. Welcome back to Our Community. Susie Thomas visiting with David Held, the executive director of Stark Tuscarawas Recycling District. And David, in our first part, you mentioned that China was one of our major customers of buying our recyclables because they would make so much out of it. Do you see a trend where we're going to begin to make more things here at home in general so that we're not so reliant on other countries to make the things that we buy? And in that case, would we be then becoming our own best customer?
Yeah, that is a great question. And really, you can see if you talk to anybody, especially when you're considering those masks that the hospital need, ventilators, other items like that. And my wife, who works at Altman Hospital, she's a nurse anesthetist there, and so we clearly understand the need to have proper protective gear. Now the problem is that when you look at our market and what people work for at an hourly rate here in the United States. The minimum wage is typically, just over $8 an hour, and
with some people advocating for twice that.
Yes, advocating for twice that.
Mm-hmm.
So when you look at what somebody is making, what they're earning over in China, they are well below the $8 an hour rate. So you can see that the Chinese have a lot of business where they make a large portion of the medical equipment and medical personal protective gear in China. And they can do a very good job. You have companies over there that are very effective at making these items, and they do it at a very low cost. So when you're looking at buying, let's say, an N95 mask, which has been pretty popular since the outbreak,
right.
You could buy them for 3-4 cents a piece. But in the United States, you're just clearly not going to be able to manufacture them at that low rate. So that's the challenge that we have. Regardless of how somebody feels about, I think it's the greatest thing to make things here in America, without a doubt. But it clearly is going to come at a higher cost in the price of the items that we're buying. And it's simply because Americans are at a higher rate of pay.
Yes.
Overall as compared to China.
This is totally out from under what you oversee. But how do people live on those wages over there and certainly not here? How does anybody live on those wages over there?
I think just the overall cost of living is higher in the United States because, Americans, we really do have a very good life.
We do.
Even, people that are in the lowest economic levels have a roof over their head and have food, and so we have our needs met. But then you look at other countries and they do not have the same standard of living that we do in America, and it's sad to see that, but that's how it works. And so oftentimes you see where the manufacturing of other products are sent over to other countries that have a much lower standard as far as their living standard, and that's how they can make the products at such a low rate. But most people don't know because they don't realize what's made over in China, because a lot of the companies that are selling the equipment. They're shifting the manufacturing over to China,
Mm-hmm.
but it's still being sold as an American-made product.
Yes.
Or, well, I shouldn't say American-made. It's still being sold as by an American company.
Yes. Well, and it's hard to know because even you look at your car and you maybe try to buy an American-made car, but all the parts are made in like all different countries all around the world. It's tough to know. But we can pretty
Yes.
well guess when we walk into dollar store, those were not made here. Yes?
No, that's correct. I mean, a lot of the material that was made at the dollar store was made over in China. And, for example, I've always, just historically bought Ford cars because, my uncle and family members have worked at Ford and
Our
just, like
too.
the cars, right?
Yes,
You
yes,
also?
us as well, yes.
Yeah, and so, but then, if you look at the Ford car that I've had recently, it was made in Canada. And so, you see, and then at the same time, you
Yeah.
have the Honda that was made here in Marysville, Ohio.
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
It's
and
hard to
so
know.
it is. It's hard. It's hard to identify. I mean, we live in a global economy where items are made in different, different countries, and but clearly we can see a need to either manufacture. Some people have said that the only way that you can cost efficiently and effectively compete with other countries like China for manufacturing is you have to get into robotics, because then you can make a higher volume of items or materials at a low cost.
But then doesn't that put everybody out of work?
Yes. That's the other drawback of it.
Wow.
And so I think it's just really clear, especially due to this stay-at-home order, when people do not have something to do when their feet hit the floor in the morning. This includes myself. If we don't have a specific purpose, something to accomplish in that particular day, you just get into trouble. I mean, you start to get lazy. You start to drift. It's not healthy physically, mentally, or emotionally for people to not have something to do.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I think it's so important that people are continuing to work. Even when you see people that are retired, they still like to have something that they're working on, whether it's doing a hobby or taking care of grandchildren. It's human beings were designed and created to work.
Yes.
And we get a benefit from it. I believe. And so that's why I think it's great. The more jobs that we have in the United States, the stronger our country's going to be.
Yes. Let's get back to
financially
what
and
emotionally
and emotionally, yeah.
Yes. Yes, I agree 100%. People needed to. It was very fortunate that so many people were able to continue their work at home. I know for our family, that's pretty much how it went. Everybody just was working from home, and you got into a different groove for sure, but you eventually got into one, a different kind of rhythm for the day.
Yeah.
And but yeah, to be able, if this was going to happen, at least it happened at a time in history when we had this technology and that we were able to continue, and not everything stopped in its tracks, but so many things stopped in their tracks that so many have suffered. And that's what we want to be able to see, people getting back to being able to be productive and back to their lives again. Can we talk about lawn chairs?
Sure.
What do we do with them? I mean, there's the nostalgia of those old lawn chairs, but they just look bad on the deck. So, what do we do with our lawn chairs if we can't recycle them?
Yeah, if it's a metal, if you don't have a recycling outlet for a particular item,
Mm-hmm.
then of course you can dispose of it in the trash. If you do have metal lawn chairs, you can take the metal.
Okay.
And you can take it to a scrap dealer. You can drop it off there. And there's various scrap dealers. You can go to our website at timetorecycle.org. And you can look for the different recycling locations. That's timetorecycle.org.
Great. Timetorecycle.org.
You got it. And it's all spelled out TIMETORECYCLE, timetorecycle.org. So you can do that. But you can also, if you have like the plastic lawn chairs, If it's still in good condition, you could take it to Goodwill or one of the reuse stores, and they'll sell it, which is a good thing. Unfortunately, the plastic is that type of plastic. A lot of the plastic recyclers do not want that type of plastic because it requires more work to break it down because it's just a larger item. So oftentimes we don't have companies in this local area that will recycle the plastic lawn chairs. But again, if they're metal, you can take them to a local scrap dealer.
I feel so good about buying composite type things, composite chairs and decks and so forth, because I feel like I'm using my old plastic that was just turned into my new thing. Is that not what's happening? What is the composite type sturdy material made out of?
Yeah, so the composite really is just a layer. It's multiple layers of plastic, and that's why they use it, because it's actually much stronger than just plastic that's just made out of one layer of injection molding. So composites are just really like multiple layers of a particular material, which makes the item much stronger. I know it's more expensive to make, but if you have a composite deck, it's going to be much stronger if it's made out of multiple layers, and it's going to last a long time. I mean, I love the composite decks. I love even the regular injection molded plastic that are made out of plastic bottles and jugs. I love those too because they will last for years. You don't have to paint them. You don't have to stain them.
Right.
Yeah, it's wonderful. Wonderful.
So I'm feeling good all the way around that I'm turning in my milk jugs and buying composite type things that are going to last a long time and be virtually no effort to take care of.
Oh, gosh, you can't beat it. Even when you look at like a vinyl fence, we years ago had purchased a vinyl fence and a white fence. That's great because we don't have to, for years I had a fence that I would have to stain like every other year.
Right.
And, the maintenance and the work, it was just a tough thing. But these new vinyl, these plastic items, fencing, chairs, they're great. They just last forever and you don't have to maintain them.
And they're making them look a lot nicer now. I don't think they look plasticky, if that makes sense.
Yes. No, you're right. You're right. And they have a better shape to them. So we still have a program where we have the grade schools. They can sign up where they can turn in all their bottle caps. And there is an expense that goes along with it. But once they collect a certain amount of bottle caps, then there's a company up in Medina. They'll take all the bottle caps and they shred them up. And they turn it into plastic lumber and actually make benches out of them.
Wow.
And so it's been a great thing that we've done it at a number of schools, but there is still a cost associated with it because there's a cost to make the bench, but it's just the materials are provided by the students that collect the bottle caps. And it's been a great program, and you get, a nice bench, multicolored bench. They're beautiful. They last a long time. And then, like you mentioned about the composites, now that we have the composite plastics, which are like multiple layers of plastic that are, bound together into like one board, those are even stronger and just last a lot longer.
This has been so informative, David. Thank you so much. And I know folks are going to want more information. Go to timetorecycle.org. David Held from the Stark-Tuscarawas Recycling District. Thank you so much for all you do in our community.
Yes, thank you for having me, Susie.